Good afternoon, guys. My name is Amanda. So I'm going to get started with the presentation. So if anyone has questions throughout, please feel free to stop me. Please note that, of course, we want to be able to answer any questions that or barriers that people may be running into regarding Whole30 or the adaptation to Whole30 that some might be doing. So I'm going to share my screen. I just politely ask that sometimes it will show on my end that it's sharing screen, but not display it to you guys. So just give me a shout verbally in the middle of the presentation and full on stop me. Interrupting is totally okay. um, and just let me know if it stops sharing screen at any point. So I'm just going to get started there. Okay. And then we're going to get started. So, of course, as always, we are going to be, oh, come on, let me share. Of course, we're going to be recording tonight's presentation and sending it out. So if you need to, it's not even letting me hit share screen. Okay. So we're going to be sending this out to everybody, of course, after. So if you want to view it after the fact, or if you need to step away at any point, this will be sent out tonight. I try to get that edited and given to everybody ASAP. So let me know if that is working. Let's see. I don't know why it's being finicky. Pressing share screen and then it's not even answering. Okay, I'm just going to refresh my browser. So if it kicks me out, I'm going to enter back right into the meeting. Just refresh. So let's see if it lets me do it now. All right, allow to share screen. Perfect, now it's letting me. Entire screen. Excellent. All right. So now you guys should be seeing everything. Okay, so the presentation is now displaying. So if you don't see it, please give me a shout. So the main purpose of today's presentation is overcoming common obstacles. The group chat has been a little quiet, so I'm assuming everyone's doing well. So of course, if you want to get things addressed that is not too personal to share tonight, please give me a shout. We will also have a Q&A at the end of the presentation, as always. So just some housekeeping. We have tonight's presentation, Overcoming Common Obstacles or Common Barriers, and then we'll have our final presentation on July 27th, so not next Monday, the following Monday at 6 p.m. And that will also be recorded. That is where we're going to celebrate our success in completing the 30 days, but also go over proper introduction of foods if you were conducting Whole30 from an elimination standpoint. So some common barriers that I've seen individuals run into, I myself have run into when conducting Whole30 in the past is, managing cravings, emotional eating, stress eating, managing socializing, especially during this point in the year, dining out, which that kind of ties into socializing, recipe burnout. Everyone in the family may want something different because they might not be doing Whole30, and of course, managing stress. So, something I like to go into, and I know it's a lot of things that people know, but it's also implementing those things. So, I try to just put it on the front of mind is when it comes to cravings and different drivers towards specific foods, there's a lot of different variables. A lot of it can be broken down into three domains: environmental triggers, physiological needs, and feeling based or emotion based eating, right? So, with environmental, if you're running into challenges maybe in the workplace or at home, different products that might be just in sight and in mind, of course, we want to look at the feng shui of, how food is placed in our kitchens, in our homes, in our various domains to which we traverse throughout our day. So, keeping more Whole30 compliant foods, healthier options in sight and in mind. The classic is keeping the fruit bowl out on the kitchen table is always a great tool to help entice, healthier, snacking, right? Or having those foods available in the kitchen when that time comes. So of course environmental can also be on our table, of course having our kitchen or our table set up where we're sitting down and having a peaceful meal when possible, keeping the TV off, maybe some gentle music, good conversation with loved ones, or of course, some individuals will place the food on the table, and if you're focusing on portion control, of course with Whole30 it's not, so much portion control is the issue, because a lot of the foods that are being highly encouraged are foods that you can eat in volume until you're feeling physiologically full versus, eating past fullness. So, it's unless you have difficulty digesting different fibers, it's kind of hard to go over in our vegetables. Most people under consume their veggies. Also, we want to think about pacing ourselves at meal times. Sometimes if we're eating in a distracted environment, i.e. like in front of the TV or the computer screen doing work, a lot of that time and attention and those, senses when eating gets, placed onto something else. And that's when individuals are like, oh, I'm not even, tasting my food, enjoying my food, savoring my food, and then can, go for other options at times. So eating slow, eating in a relaxed pace can allow your vagus nerve to have time to travel that impulse or that stimulus up to the brain to say, hey, I'm full, right? If I'm eating really quickly on the go, off the dash of the car, going from one thing to the next, it's not really giving myself the ability to be present with my meal. So really trying to be strategic about that. Given the pace of the modern day world, we try to do this to the best of our abilities, right? Also, going back to when families would say, depending on how we observe, but, prayer or grace before a meal, or I love it when people share like a peek and a pit of their day with loved ones or take a moment to reflect upon that to themselves. It's kind of a grounding technique, and a way of expressing gratitude going into the meal, right? Thinking about preparation, the expression fail to prepare, prepare to fail. I think environmentally that's super important, that if you have what you need available, and we take that extra time, to time block that on our weekends to have time, have the foods that we need going into the work week, and some time maybe on hopefully a Wednesday or so to help with the second half of the week. It really can set us up for success, because then it's just an option to per se, fall into. Keeping the water bottle, right? Hydration around this time of year is super important. Insight and in mind. Some techniques that successful patients have noted is having a vibrant colored water bottle, or a water bottle that they just like. It might be pretty to them, or whatnot. That's fine. Or putting stickers on it, or just a catching color that it catches your eye, reminds you to drink. For myself, I have to have the water in front of me at my desk when I'm counseling, because if it's not there, I don't have a good thirst mechanism. Now everybody else is a little different, but that's just a bit of a personal share. Unless I'm working out or outside sweating, I'm really not feeling too thirsty, that I have to have it there, or else it's not happening. I do love the water bottles that have like the fluid ounces or the time points on it, just to help keep mindful of, where are we at, throughout our day. Of course, leaning on support with family members. Hey, you keep leaving the Entenmann's donuts on the counter. I'm always big with, compliment, critique, compliment. So, hey, um, I know you're always super supportive of me and I'm super grateful, but you keep leaving the Entenmann's or, donuts on the table, and it's super enticing to me, and I'm trying to really avoid those. Is it possible that you can, we could keep those out of sight, out of mind? I'm so grateful for you and would be really appreciative if we could do that. It's all in the, the delivery of when we say things to people, but don't be afraid to ask for support from our loved ones. Of course, the next category though is physiological. So physiological needs, Oh, before actually jumping from environmental to physiological, thinking about our movement pathways. So I know, like the end of the school year, I have a lot of individuals, educators that will note to me, okay, I'm walking past, the main office and there's lots of goodies. Or if I'm working with, someone in law enforcement, people are bringing in, goodies as a form of gratitude and it's at that front desk. Like just mentally preparing yourself before you are going to pass that trigger, acknowledge it. Say, okay, hey, I know I'm going to walk past this, but I already have something else in my lunch bag that I'm looking forward to and I'm excited about. I don't want to cause people to have to be, changing their whole movement pattern all the time, and sometimes that's not really feasible. But if you can avoid that, avoid it, or mentally prepare in advance, to say to yourself. And I know it sounds so simplistic, but planning ahead and saying to yourself as you're walking in the door, hey, I'm going to pass this, but I don't need this right now. It's not really going to feel good. How's my future self going to feel in the next hour or so? Is it going to make my stomach hurt a bit? Is it going to derail me from my future goals? So it's what will my future self say to my present self, and staying grounded in that. Next is, of course, our physiological needs, right? So with Whole30 or just any uh, general healthy nutrition guidance, for most people, we want to aim to eat every 2 to 4 hours. Typically, that's breakfast, lunch, dinner, 1 to 2 snacks. Of course, our meal timing is super important as it helps to modulate our blood sugar, especially in how we balance our meals, right? So if we're not having breakfast in the morning, I think I see that most common in counseling. That's when people tend to have that, I'm so hungry at lunch, I'm more enticed by the stuff in the break room because we're going into that meal, lower blood sugar and extremely, craving. We'll go more into that with the hunger fullness scale, but we're not just craving, we're also hungry. So that's always a hard competition to manage. Of course, if you're not having breakfast, you're cutting out close to, if you count snacks, like a fourth of your nutrition for the day, right? When you think about it, your two snacks is going to combine typically be equivalent to a meal. So that's why I say one fourth. And then you have, 3 meals in a day. So really, really strive to have balanced meals, though, on top of trying to have at least a breakfast, lunch, dinner, and 1 to 2 snacks in your day. By balanced meals, we'll go a little more in depth, but similar to what we've shared in previous presentations, trying to aim to have, a protein source, a carb, right? Like a fruit, vegetable, including a starch, right? Like Whole30, the starches get kind of limited. So we end up leaning a lot on foods like potatoes, for example, or if you are including the beans as a part of your program, as you know, they agree with your body, the beans. So really having, a protein, a carb, meaning like produce and a starch, and then of course healthy fat. Those nutrients really work together to manage the flow of food through your digestive tract. So if I just have, say, some potatoes, that's great. It got some fiber there and some, prebiotics potentially, but I need the protein to really, and the healthy fat to stabilize that. And of course, the fiber from the produce to really bind all of that in what's called the bolus in the stomach. And it's going to move much more slowly and keep my stomach full for a longer period of time because those digestive acids need to take more time to break down those foods. So, foods like protein and fat, they're just much more complex molecules. So the acids in the stomach particularly break down the proteins, and it's going to gradually wear away at that. Where more simplistic carbs are going to digest much more quickly, go from the stomach into the small intestine, and go straight. The sugar goes into our bloodstream. But if the protein and the fat and the fiber are acting as those anchors, that blood sugar is going to more steadily rise. And we'll go over that in graphic form coming up in subsequent slides. Of course, hydration is a really key piece in our physiological needs that can affect our cravings. So if we're dehydrated, of course, our hypothalamus tells us if we're hungry, we're thirsty, and we're tired. Sometimes those communication lines can get a little crossed. So our body, of course, gets hydration from various foods, in particular fruits and vegetables are ones to highlight. So we can be feeling like we might be hungry, right? Not getting those hunger pangs, right? That's a good way to tell someone the difference. But really, we're thirsty and dehydrated. So it's really important to check back in. If you're getting that 3 p.m., I'm really craving sugar, I'm so hungry, feeling, and I'm coming home from work and I'm like raiding my cabinets. All right, am I hydrated? Did I have a balanced lunch? Did I have a balanced breakfast? All right, either way, it's good to have a snack mid afternoon, but you shouldn't be that, ravenously hungry come that time. So, reflecting back, thinking about that. Like I was just saying, fiber plays a big role into our motility and not just our motility, but our microbiome. But in terms of cravings, it keeps us fuller longer. It takes up space, it has volume. And so, what's great about Whole30 is, of course, Whole30 promotes a lot of high fiber foods, nuts and seeds, fruits and vegetables. And if you are including the beans, even though it's not classic Whole30, but as we've discussed in subsequent seminars, if you are adding the beans, they're great fiber sources. So that's one thing about Whole30 is it's typically a high fiber diet. Another reason to emphasize the water to help that fiber move through. Women really need about 20 grams of fiber or above per day. Men about 30, 35 grams per day. Ideally, depending on your GI health, that we get closer to 40, but we're always trying to shoot for the stars, right? First things first is on average, try to just get about above 30 grams per day. That also means you're getting in probably more antioxidants in your day as well, and can be very beneficial for metabolic health as we get older. And then variety. I did tap on this by having, balanced meals with, a variety of your macronutrients, meaning protein, carbs, and fats. So, of course, that variety of nutrients helps with the better flow of food through your GI tract, keeping you fuller longer. And then sleep. As I mentioned with hydration, your hypothalamus is going to tell you you're tired, you're thirsty, and or you're hungry. If we're sleep deprived, we're more prone to crave sweets and saturated fats. Or sometimes it's that confusion of, am I tired and need energy from food, or am I tired and need to sleep? So, of course, we should be aiming for 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night. I do like a sleep tracker just because it keeps us mindful, even if you do it for, a week to a month just to get an idea. I think it's good to look at the quality of our sleep. I know they're not perfect, meaning like the Fitbit, the Aura Ring, Garmin, Apple Watch, etc., but it can be a way to trend your data at least. And then lastly is feeling based eating, right? I think if you're managing physiological needs, it really does help to better manage feeling based eating or emotional eating. We are raised in a society where, food is celebration. Food is, you get a shot, you get a lollipop, you do good on something, you go out to eat to celebrate, or it's there for us as comfort too, right? We're stressed and or we've been maybe using it as procrastination from work or something. It's that little dopamine hit, whatever trigger that can be for you, right? Food is always abundant and around environmentally, but has also been potentially ingrained in different ways as a coping mechanism, depending on your lived experience. So when you're noting that, it's good to, like, say someone, if you're prone for, binging, right? It's good to, pause for a moment and try to stop, reflect, say, okay, I'm about to go for this food. Or we notice it after we had a binge, maybe. It's about pausing, grounding oneself, and, taking a deep breath and just saying, hey, where is this coming from? Did I eat enough earlier? Am I dehydrated? Like, go through those physiological and environmental aspects that we touched on, right? All right, no, it's not that, or maybe it's a combination. Oh, I just got a phone call from my sister and I'm super stressed because, mom is sick and we're running around, managing the kids and then managing our parents, and something kind of just set me off. or maybe, I'm doing a lot of work at night after work and I'm looking for that little dopamine hit because, I'm sitting on the laptop at, whatever time at night, and I really wish I was using my time more for me versus, working. What is that potential trigger? What's going on? And try to name it. Try to journal it, talk with a mental health therapist about it, but reflection and seeing where that can be coming from. Now, if it's hunger based on top of being, feelings based, that makes sense, right? If you have low blood sugar or you're not eating enough throughout the day, a stressor is more likely to stress you when you are, low blood sugar or not getting enough. It's more likely to permeate at times. Or, we're all human; things permeate from time to time, even if we have been hitting our physiological marks, right? So saying, okay, now am I hungry or am I craving? Okay, I just ate dinner. I feel physiologically, full. Like I don't feel hollow. I don't feel lightheaded. I just ate good portions. All right, if I need to eat a little bit more, I'm going to boost up my veggies, boost up my lean proteins, maybe some olive oil, etc. Lean on those better foods. Okay, all right, no, I'm physically full. I'm just, craving. All right, well, what am I looking for? Am I bored? Am I stressed? Am I, trying to step away from something? Am I in a celebratory mood? What is that? And then can I replace that with something else, right? I love things that occupy the hands. Some individuals love grabbing like a coloring book, like a mandala book, and having, colored pencils, whatnot, on the coffee table available. Sometimes it's we're watching TV, but we're not like fully mentally occupied when we're watching TV. Or is it, old school, have, a crossword puzzle book or a Sudoku book, or, playing music, right? Playing the guitar keeps our hands busy, crocheting, or should I just like, step outside, walk out to the garden, throw the ball for the dogs, pet the cat, etc. Can I replace this thing I'm looking to cope for with something else that would be a healthier coping skill, given that I am not hungry? If it is hunger, but it's for a particular food, we do of course have always like sweet swaps in the recipes for everybody. So, going back into that, can I make a stuffed date really quickly, or a homemade Whole30 ice cream or popsicle do I have made in the fridge? I think another important point is to think about cravings in advance. And if you tend to crave sweets, okay, you're human. So is 95% of my patients, right? So there's no guilt, no shame there. But I think it's about having those options available so that, the other options that might also be tempting in the home, you can deviate towards something else and swap it towards the healthier option, right? So when I was tapping on physiological needs, I was talking a lot about, blood sugars, and for instance, right? So on that bottom right corner, this is just in general, not Whole30, but in general, this is what you call the carbohydrate choice spectrum. So on the left, you have your more complex carbs, your higher fiber carbs. They're more nutrient dense. As I go across, that fiber or nutrient availability deduces, as you see, the classic, just for the example's sake, Pop Tart, soda on the right hand side, right? Not Whole30. If I don't eat enough of those better carbs on the left hand side, like the fruits, the vegetables, the potatoes, the beans, for example, I'm going to be craving those more refined carbs, especially later in the day, because I'm going to need that energy quicker. And those more simple carbs on the right hand side of the spectrum are a lot faster to break down and utilize for glucose. So that's good to know, like if someone that we love has low blood sugar and runs into barriers there, maybe has diabetes. But for our sake, if we're not eating enough of those better carbs earlier in the day, your body runs on carbs. We're not doing keto. So you still need to make sure you're getting carbs, but emphasize the better type so that your body's not like, please feed me right now. I need it so badly. And then we're craving those more refined carbs. As our brain may be built on fats, right? Our brain is made of a lot of omega-3s, but it runs off glucose. On the top left, you do see a general, blood sugar graph of, our higher glycemic foods, how they spike compared to our lower glycemic foods. So the carbs on the left-hand side of that carbohydrate choice continuum graph, you're going to see in yellow, right? Especially if you pair it with a protein or healthy fat. So it's going to, from when we eat it, goes into our stomach. Some of it starts to break down in our mouth with salivary amylase, but for the most part, goes into the stomach, gets broken down, then goes into our small intestine where it is absorbed. But of course, if it's bound with fiber plus protein or healthy fat, you're going to see a much lower and slower spike over a longer period of time, demonstrating how it sustains you longer, and then it's less of a crash down versus those classic foods. Of course, you're just seeing here on the right hand side of the carbohydrate choice continuum. That's going to represent that red mountaintop, I guess that we would call it, in the high glycemic line, and the blood glucose levels going high for what's high for us, and then crashing down rather quickly over a much shorter period of time versus the lower glycemic foods. So having these higher fiber, just isolating carbs alone, holds us over longer, keeps us from spiking our A1C or our blood sugars higher, and carries us over longer so we can be more sustained from one meal to the next. This graph is very similar. It just demonstrates, like we were saying, those higher glycemic foods spike us high for what's high for us, and then crashes us back down rather quickly. And then we have our lower glycemic carbs, like our fruits, our vegetables, for post Whole30, our whole grains, and our beans and legumes. They sustain us over a much longer period of time. But if I'm not pairing it with protein or healthy fat, it's not really going to hold me too long, right? I'm still hungry after I eat an apple. So we're pairing the apple with, say, for Whole30's sake, almond butter, right? Or some nuts or seeds, for example. I love the chicken jerky or turkey jerky that is nitrate free, because when we chew up those foods, we swallow it, goes in the stomach, it's all mixed together. It's going to take longer for that to break down and carry us over a much longer period of time, sustaining us to the next meal. So I'm less likely to want to impulsively, grab something before I eat, lunch or dinner. However, snacks are still great, so I don't want to come off the wrong way, especially if all right, between lunch and dinner, I'm going to be more than 3-4 hours. Place that snack there. That is totally fine. That's why we add snacks to every Whole30 recipe packet that we send out along with Sweet Swaps. Something I really love, the hunger fullness scale. If you've never done this before, it's been a while since you've done this, it's great to have this scale like on the kitchen table or on the fridge. And it's good to just, like, I know it sounds kind of quirky, but like check in with, right? Like, where am I falling on the scale right now? Okay. I'm at a 1, right? I am so hungry. All right. Well, that's when we're more triggered to like grab something impulsively that might not be the best choice for us. And people I notice when they're at a 1, they're so hungry. They're right in the cabinets. They're like eating quickly, right? I've been there myself. And more likely to end at a 10 because of that pace of eating that tends to happen when we're so hungry. The name of the game is to try to eat when we would consider ourselves a 3, right? I'm pretty hungry. I could eat. That starting contraction of the stomach, or that growl, right? The start of that sensation of hunger. We want to catch it then at like a 3. So of course, as we go across that scale, that 6-7, yes, no, I'm not trying to say 6-7 just now, area of the hunger scale, that I'm slightly full, I'm pleasantly full, right? About to feel like uncomfortably full. I've just had enough. I'm satiated, right? Satiated is the golden term. If we start eating at 3, we're more likely to end at that, about 6 sensation. So I think it's good to have that out as just a mindful measure. I know it sounds super simplistic, but we are always juggling 50 million things. And a lot of times it's like, I know. Okay, but are we putting that on front of mind and utilizing that when we need it, right? So having these tools just help to put it on the front of mind and allow us to implement it. This is one of those Whole30 tools we had similar to one we sent out in the past with ways just to help with portioning. Of course, if you're working one-on-one with a registered dietitian, we do help with factoring your specific portions at meals, but this is just a good overall guide. For most individuals, are we having at least a palm to a full hand size of protein, right? Chicken, turkey, fish, tofu, tempeh, depending on how you're, if you're doing more of the plant-based Whole30, or vegetarian, vegan, I should say. Veggies is pretty infinite, so long as you're not hurting your stomach. So with veggies, they usually say like fill the rest of your plate. I like to say like try to do 1 to 2 fists at least, right? A fist is about the size of a cup roughly, right? Of course, using a real cup is great, but sometimes we improvise and something is better than nothing, right? If it's breakfast or snack, do we have a fruit? Typically serving sizes of fruit are about 3/4 to 1 cup. If it's like berries or cut fruit, like piece fruit, right? Like grapes, or an apple is one fruit, right? A whole orange is one. What gets kind of murky is like bananas. Is it the devil to eat a whole banana? No. I think it's just worthwhile to note that fruits and vegetables. My cat is tossing things around and I love him, but I'm just going to stop him real quick. All right. But it's important to note like just fruits are kind of portioned in 15 grams of carb intervals. So a half of a banana is technically a serving size, and most individuals get about 2 to 3 fruits per day. With Whole30, I would definitely be nudging towards 3 servings of fruit just because the other carbs are more limited, but you just want to make sure that you're pairing them, right? 2 kiwis is technically a portion. 2 clementines is technically a portion. So I think that's just important to know. If you're just having 1 kiwi, that's technically half of a portion. In terms of oils or clarified butter as a part of Whole30, thumb is about the size of a tablespoon. So 1 to 2 thumbs in a meal is a good way to consider it. Of course, so or if you're not having an oil or clarified butter, coconut, olives, nuts, and seeds. It's another way to have a healthy fat. Of course, the potato, I like to say, maybe about the size of your fist, depending on your uh, athletic needs. So it's good to think about it as, do I have at least a hand of protein, 1 to 2 fists of vegetables, about a fist of a starch at my, main meals, maybe a fruit on the side. Of course, is a good way to say, am I eating enough? Right? I think that's really important to make sure you're eating enough of these healthy foods, not just eating Whole30 compliant, but am I eating enough to sustain myself? Most important. Some other strategies, we've talking a lot about this, so this is just a little bit redundant, but just a healthy nudge of just plan ahead for cravings, keep up with your water, check in, am I distracted eating? There's different mindfulness techniques. I'm a big fan of the raisin meditation before meals. It's actually a fun activity to do with your family. I know it sounds kind of funny, but maybe after Whole30, even peppermint patty, the mini peppermint patty is a great one to use for this instead of the raisin. The raisin gets recommended for this exercise because it's just very textured. You have a little bit of that salty sweetness, how it evolves, but it's about like, of course, and you first like smell the raisin, feel the raisin, place the raisin on your tongue, feel how it dissolves, take note of the different senses and where this raisin came from. And it's kind of quirky, but it's also really good at kind of slowing us down and really taking in the meal, because coming from this more modern day environment, we don't always recognize and give gratitude. I know I don't always enough. Like, where did this food come from? The journey it took to come to my plate. It helps us to go slow and really be present with that meal, and it can help if portion control is a barrier. it does help us in terms of managing our portions. Like I was saying, sleep is a big factor. One of my favorite tips at night, if you're catching yourself, just getting into bed too late, is, setting that evening alarm, maybe around 8 o'clock, start winding down and have, an evening bedtime routine. Maybe it's reading before bed, stretching, something low stimulation, charging the phone outside of the room, having an alarm clock, or, at least 4 feet away from the body, preventing ourselves from scrolling and having that blue light. If we are, the type that needs TV to fall asleep, okay, am I watching, a high stimulation show like House of the Dragon, Game of Thrones, or am I watching something like Seinfeld? Right? Try to really consider what you're doing and if it's making you very alert or if it's helping to make you drowsy and fall into sleep. And I know I'm a broken record, but really try to aim to eat every 3 to 4 hours within about a 12-hour window for most individuals. So, maybe we stop eating around 8 p.m. and start eating our breakfast around 8 a.m. To give your GI tract that chance to rest. So with workouts, something I think that's a piece that some people run into as a common barrier. If you can align your meals with your workout timing, right? If you work out after work, for example, trying to eat your lunch and then have, a snack before going into your workout, that can be wonderful. These are just some examples. I'm big on, 15 to 30 grams of carbs before your workout. I know I was just saying always pair, protein and or healthy fat with a carb before you work out. If it's in that hour before you work out, it's kind of like the opposite of what I just said. Have just, carb by itself because you want that glucose to enter your system rather quickly so you can harness it for energy during your workout, especially if it's a more cardio, higher intensity workout. So simple fruit is great. That's it bars are Whole30 compliant. It's just compressed fruit. You could have that, keep that in your gym bag as a backup, and then trying to eat within 60 minutes of your workout. So when you're coming home after work, and you have dinner ready, that's a great post-workout meal. Depending on your caloric need, you might be boosting up snacks a little more just to help meet that excess calorie demand of your workouts, depending on what you're training for, right? So like the person who is, training for a certain sport might need a lot more calories than the casual exerciser. So it's just important to consider your own personal needs. And of course, in one-on-one counseling, we do discuss sports nutrition with our patients to help them meet those needs to hit those performance related goals. This is something that I just also love as another mindfulness tool. If you're finding, staying present at meals and eating slowly, being aware of what we're taking in to be a barrier, this is another one of those images that are great to print out, put on the table as just a gentle reminder. One of these I don't agree with, which is like eat with your non-dominant hand. We shouldn't have to go through so many leaps and bounds to to eat mindfully. There's other strategies. It shouldn't feel like that. It should, of course, it's, this is recognizing, balancing the plate as we're saying, turning the TV off, physically sitting down. I know a lot of individuals who, will stand and eat on the go. These are your basic needs, right? Eating is one of your basic needs. We should be making time for that. If we're not making time, like once in a while, okay. But if all your meals are standing and on the go, there might be something off balance in our lifestyle and prioritizing ourselves for that, short time period that it takes to eat. um, I, I I understand with breakfast that can be somewhat on the go, right? Like a smoothie or when you get into work, eating something quickly and then getting to it. Okay, fine, but like at least one or two meals in your day, really try to sit down, enjoy it, savor your meal. Because if we're not making the basic time to eat for ourselves, what are we making time for? It just makes me almost sad when people are telling me they don't have time to sit down and eat on the regular. It allows us to really taste our meal and really focusing on chewing, right? I know that sounds so simplistic, but I have a lot of individuals that are eating so quickly, and it's that New York mindset, right, that we have, that when we're not breaking down our food mechanically, where digestion starts in the mouth, those bigger pieces, yes, the stomach does help to break down food, but bigger pieces are passing through, and you're more likely to have an upset stomach that way as well. More likely to swallow air. I'm not saying where it says chew 25 times, I'm not saying count it, but really make sure you're tasting it, right? You spent the money on the food, you should enjoy it, savor it, and then move on. So this is just a good visual. Identifying triggers. So if you were scratching your head, like I know I tend to like emotionally eat or just grab things impulsively, and I just don't know why that's happening. Food journaling can be a really great tool. You guys do have access to the Practice Better journal in here. It's a photo journal. You can use it where you're just writing in apple and it logs it as like a written journal, or you can search in the search bar and pull up the food or make recipes in it. So it counts actually how much calories, carbs, fat, fiber to make sure you're eating enough of those nutrients in your day. And it's good to reflect back on it and be like, oh, you can, log, digestive issues or different signs and symptoms in there to help find rhyme or reason, emotion too. So it does help to recognize patterns. Of course, working one-on-one with a registered dietitian does also help to recognize those patterns, because as you're creating that space to talk it through in counseling, they might be noticing things to give you, feedback on professionally. And of course, usually writing something down makes it tangible, it makes it real. So then it's easier to note it and analyze it. Usually just from a reflective mindset of just, what's going on? Okay, this is what's working well. This is where I'm getting a little tripped up. All right, I gotta, tweak this, do that. All right, move on. And that's what I'm going to focus in on now. No guilt, no shame, just what do I want to focus in on? What am I recognizing is happening, and then how do I overcome this? So seeking support is essentially what I'm getting at, is of course working one-on-one with a registered dietitian. Please utilize the GroupMe app. The GroupMe app's been really quiet. I'm not a big like, take pictures of my food, and I don't want to also skew you guys, but I want to know, like, if you're running into something, put that in the GroupMe app. Share your wins, share your barriers. This is, it's here for you. If we're not talking about it, we don't know about it. So let me know if you're running into stuff. Share with, other people in the challenge. Utilize it. It's there for you. Seek support. Not just in the GroupMe app or here, in Q&As or one-on-one with a registered dietitian, but with loved ones that support you and are going to be empathetic and understanding to what you're going through. And often talking things through can lead you to the right, resources, even if it's just hearing yourself aloud, and it's a way to help process it. What lives in the dark dies in the light, I like to say. Eating out, socializing, that's a big piece with Whole30. I know this time of year can be social. That's why, I wanted to make that bonus, packet for barbecues is a big thing that everyone runs into. In the recap email, I am going to put for restaurants, just like if you're going to this style restaurant, here's some examples for like multiple classic, styled restaurants. But just like anything, we got to plan ahead, right? With meal prep, set an appointment with yourself to, go through the recipes we're sending out, or go through the Whole30 resources that they have available online recipes. We have the Whole30 recipe book available too, that elevation. Plan some things ahead. Look at the cabinets, look at the fridge, look at what you want to utilize. Anything that you need, write it in the grocery list. If time is thin, there's no tea, no shame on doing a grocery delivery or a grocery pickup, just to save you some time. And also, there's no shame in getting some pre-prepared things, right? Like some pre-prepared hard-boiled eggs, or the frozen sweet potato toast. I'm frustrated because I wish it was at more places besides just Whole Foods. But lean on, if it's frozen chicken, all right, it's not perfect, but something is better than nothing, right? So if it's pre-cut fruit, all right. Um, but see where you're struggling. If it's time, all right, how do I save time or how do I time block? Set realistic expectations, right? 2 to 3 recipes a week for like lunches and dinners. If you're okay with having leftovers, make it in bulk or do double dinner nights where, maybe you only have time on Mondays and Thursdays and maybe a little on the weekend to cook. All right, can I cook a bunch of stuff in bulk, right? I've got the grill going. Can I put the chicken on the grill, the steak on the grill, and some grill foil packets of some fish or shrimp? Yeah, so now I've got a bunch of things from a protein standpoint. Maybe I'm grilling up a bunch of veggies. All right, so that can get me through the next, few days at least. And I'm utilizing the time I have now, not just to cook one thing, but a couple of things in a manageable way that I'm not, using the oven, then using the stove, and then running outside to use the grill, right? This is where planning can really come together. Account for snacks and cravings, as I'm saying too. I've said before, but be realistic with yourself. If we're eating out in terms of planning ahead, look at the restaurant in advance or be the one to pick the restaurant. So if your friends want to go out, all right, hey guys, can we go to, like I don't want to name specific names of different restaurants, but if you're choosing like a steakhouse or something on the go like a Cava or Chipotle, or you're choosing like a Spanish style restaurant, it's easier to navigate certain wants, and especially if you have, particular preferences on what type of food you want to have, be the one to set the plan then. If you're uncertain, call ahead, or you know you're paying for the meal. It's all about how you ask. Says I know individuals have said to me, I feel uncomfortable, asking the waiter or waitress like, what's this cooked in, or what's in it. It's all how you ask, right? Hey, listen, I have some dietary needs. I'm just really curious. Is it possible to get, this chicken piccata cooked in olive oil? I'm just really being careful of, certain additives in my food. It's all how you ask, or what comes with it. Is it okay if I sub the bun with like a potato instead? And I just want to do some steamed veggies. Yeah, sure, no problem, right? At the end of the day, you're the one paying for the meal, but it's just how you ask and the timing of it, and think ahead, right? Just like anything, think ahead saves us so much. If you're going somewhere like a social a party, like a graduation party, a barbecue, etc., of course they probably will have something there, but we can't rely on that unless it's your sister or your brother, your mom, your dad, friend, and you could say, hey, what are you cooking? Can we set the menu together? What do you want me to bring? Blah blah blah. Bring your own healthy option, BYOHO, right? We've got that whole recipe packet of July 4th, and also the week 1, 2, and 3 options, plus everything that's also available online. Bring a healthy option. There's nothing wrong with, even if you want to bring your own, for example, like salmon burgers or chicken or turkey, or you're trying red meat's still part of Whole30. If you want to do, a burger and then you bring a portobello mushroom bun, okay, not a big deal, right? It's um, if you're concerned of people saying things, right? Like, oh, what did you bring there? Turn it into a fun like teaching moment, right? It's kind of about the vibe you're coming from, right? Oh, I'm doing this Whole30 challenge, and I'm really trying to figure out, what works best for me. This is what it's about, right? I'm doing this. And if someone has, something positive, just they resonate with it and they're like, oh, that's really cool, I didn't know that that's a thing, and I want to try that, right? It's like you could be positively motivating someone. Or if someone makes a comment, they make a comment, all right, they're not writing you a Christmas card. It's what we let permeate, right? It's set boundaries with food pushing. It could be, oh, that looks so great, thank you so much for offering. I'm not I'm really trying to focus in on my health, or I have some specific goals right now, but I'd love to take the recipe from you, or give a compliment, right? But I can't, no, thank you, but that looks amazing. I would really love to have it. Maybe after I'm done doing the Whole30, share what you feel comfortable sharing. You don't have to tell everybody your business if they're not someone that's, super close, or if they might not be as receptive. That's fine. But it's all the art of the delivery. And most people, I think, in modern day, are waking up to nutrition and different ways of caring for ourselves. So, it could be a fun teaching moment. But it's all the energy that we put out, if that makes any sense. Uh, Plate power, right? So if you're at a barbecue, a good thing to think about. I'm just saying barbecues, that's the classic thing people are running into, or sitting poolside or beach, boat, etc. Like we touched on earlier, traveling. Like I was saying, do I have a protein on my plate? Do I have some kind of a starch? Do I have a produce item? Is there a little fat on it, right? Am I balancing the meal? Just think about those 4 items in the checklist for each meal. Do I have a protein? Do I have a starch? Do I have a produce? Do I have a fat? Um, I think that it keeps it simple. It's easy. I know there's the USDA My Plate, make half your plate fruits and vegetables, 1/4 of starch, 1/4 of protein. All right, even if you can make it a peace sign shape, right? A third, a third, a third, and then the fat is used to cook with or flavoring, that's fine too, right? Just look at where you're starting from and what is a good positive step forward for you. If you're going into a social gathering, I know I say this with all social things, but do not avoid saving calories. I think a lot of people get that now, but it always resonates with a few. So avoid saving calories or skipping meals beforehand. We don't have to starve ourselves before we go out to dinner or before a barbecue. Still have breakfast. And if the barbecue's at like 2 o'clock, right, they're probably not going to have the food out right away. So we don't want to be, eyeing that chip bowl. And, we've all probably been on a party once or twice where it's like the chip bowl has been, eaten to the very bottom crumbs because everyone's so hungry by the time the food gets out, right? So have breakfast, have a lunch, maybe a snack beforehand based on the timing, have something with you just in case. And if you are bringing your own healthy option, awesome, right? It can be something to lean on based on timing. Uh, Check in with your hunger and fullness cues to assess, do I need the snack? Do I not? Am I at 3? Yeah, I'm at a 3. All right, let me have, some trail mix with some fruit, or let me have one of those Cocoa June yogurts with a little protein powder in there. Like the only what you need is Whole30 compliant with some fruit. Or can I have, an RX bar or an Epic bar in my bag just to help tide me by? Those are Whole30. But check in with that hunger fullness scale. I used to turn it into like a joke, but in a positive way with a friend of mine. And I'd be like, I'm feeling like a 3 right now, or I'm feeling pretty close to a 7. We would just like, where are you at? And we would like laugh at it, but it also held truth and kept mindful. So use the tools that are put before you. Avoid posting up in the kitchen. So, or just hovering around the food. If you're outside at like the pool, the beach, the barbecue, um, and you're not hungry, but the food's all around us, and it's enticing because it's an environmental trigger. All right, maybe go off and play cornhole, right? Bring a game with you depending on where you're going, or a book, or something else to keep you occupied. Oh, Uncle Fred's here. I haven't talked to Uncle Fred in so long. Let me think about 2 to 3 things at least that from the people that I know I'm going to be around today, that I want to ask about and genuinely check in about, right? Other things aside from the food. And of course, expressing gratitude for the moment and our loved ones, and having the blessings of this food around us. Um, if you can have a post meal walk, depending on the situation, right? Like we're barbecuing on the beach, we did the drive on, and now we just ate some grilled chicken with some Primal Kitchen Italian marinade and some veggies on the grill, and then had some fruit, like a nice fruit salad. Now I'm feeling pretty full. All right, I'm going to go for a gentle walk down the beach with, some of my friends, pick at some seashells or toss the cornhole bags, or play a little volleyball. Of course, be careful of, too much stimulating stuff right after you eat, right? Like wait 30 minutes upon swimming kind of situation, but have other things to help digest too can be a good tool. the family can sometimes be a barrier in a positive way, that they're hungry and they want some good nutritious meals at home, but they might not be doing Whole30. So some people express the barriers: I'm trying to cook healthier, but my family members are picky and I feel like a short order cook, and I end up caving to their preferences. Where the solution can be, review recipes with them together, right? Like, take the Whole30 recipes that we're sending out, say, hey, does this look good to you? And if they're like, yeah, I really want that, but I'd really want some pasta with that. I know it's a bit of an environmental trigger at that point for us, but if you're allowing, beans in your Whole30, you can get a bean-based pasta. That always works too. But maybe we cook, or we say, hey, I'm going to cook this portion of the meal. Can you, boil the water and just make the pasta on the side? And you could have that as with the meal that I'm already making. Especially if they're looking at the recipes with you, taking those like 5-10 minutes. It could be off your phone. Pull up the email or the Practice Better app that has everything in it, and say, what do you think of this? You could be sitting in the car making the most of your time, going somewhere, and just say, hey, look at this. Or, I'm going to go to the grocery store soon, and it's maybe Sunday morning. Can we, sit down and talk for a second about what you're thinking about for the week, right? Of course, it's always good to give people a heads up, hey, on Sunday, I'm going to be reviewing a couple recipes, or Saturday, whatever day. Are you around for it? I'd really want to take like 15 minutes together to just, do this. No, I really don't want to. But hey, listen, it's going to, give us a chance for later in the week to have some more options that are, tasty, nutritious, and available to us. So if we make this time now, it's going to pay off for us later in the week. Or, no, I don't want to. All right, well, I've given you the opportunity to work with me on this. This is what I'm going to make for the week. If you want to add sides or add other things, please go ahead. That's not a problem. But just know this is what I'm planning on making for the week. I know every household and every personality is different, but put yourself, if you're putting your needs first, it's not necessarily selfish. Just make sure you're communicating, right? I think communication is the biggest piece in all of this. So stress management, of course, the impact of stress can affect our triggers and emotional eating. We've been touching a lot on that. I wanted to just give a little extra piece on, of course, sleep helps us to better manage our stress. If we're on 5-6 hours of sleep, we're more likely to feel different stressors versus if we're on a fuller night's sleep. So I think it's really about prioritizing the evening routine. The physical activity like the walking, yoga, strength training can also help to be rerouters for managing stress. Of course, different relaxation practices, self-care, progressive relaxation are all great tools. Meditation. I'm a big fan of the 4-7-8 breathing pattern, where you breathe in for 4, hold for 7, exhale for 8, to really help to lower that heart rate and relax us. But of course, if anyone is struggling with their mental health, Sunrise Counseling Centers is a great resource. They have multiple locations across the island, and they're actually right next door to us on John Street. So I just, as we were talking about emotional eating, I didn't want to not mention these pieces. And of course, very important, I want to first say thank you to everybody. We're going to do the Q&A and touch on, we're going to meet again on reintegration of the different foods on July 27th at 6, that Monday, not next Monday, the following Monday, but also to celebrate ourselves. The official last day of the 30 days is July 28th. So it's the day right after that presentation. So we're going to go over introduction before it ends so that we could help to prepare. So that would work really nicely. And I'm going to be sending out the recipes. If you didn't see them, I've been releasing them actually earlier than Sundays, so people have time to prepare like Thursdays and Fridays. So I'm going to send that out along with the module information that contains this information, more so in writing. I'm going to also send the recording out tonight too. And of course, if anyone missed those recipes, I'll attach this week's recipes to this email just to make sure everything is fully communicated. But I do want to, see if anyone has any questions or if anything they want to share, so that we can help to address anything. Checking in on the chat. All right, guys. Last call for any questions. I'm stopping share. So, of course, we have the group me, and if it's a very, personal question, especially containing medical information, don't hesitate to email us on the side or call the office, text the office. We're here for that. But thank you. No, oh, Carolyn, that was so sweet. That was, thank you. And thank you guys for taking the time to join tonight, to do the challenge. I'm proud of anybody signing up to do something to better themselves and nudge themselves forward. We all like trying to just be our best self every single day. And we're always all working on something. So just kudos to you guys. Proud of everybody for doing this. And just again, I know I'm a broken record. Don't be a stranger. If you have questions, reach out. If we don't know, we can't help. So have such a good night. Enjoy your July. We'll talk again soon. And all right. Thank you guys. Bye, guys.